You would be absolutely positively sniffing paint if you don't think that Alabama, Georgia, and Florida aren't sitting back like, why are we paying South Carolina and Kentucky and Mississippi State? Why are we paying them the same amount of money as us? What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football, back at it again. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA college football, subscribe to this channel right now. I also do some pro football, college football, and Madden football videos as well. Please subscribe. Hit that red subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Hit the like button too. Really helps out the channel. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys. I'm pondering something. Has anybody here seen V for Vendetta? When the cop just said, I just sat back there, with his British accent, and it all just made sense. It was just a feeling. I could see the whole thing. I had that kind of situation recently here. I feel like we are completely approaching realignment with such a short-sighted view right now. What I want to do is kind of take you through what the short-sighted view kind of looks like. And again, we actually have some information from last year about the Big 12 realignment that is going to show you just how many reports there are about this and that and here and there. We're going to see that mindset, and we're going to see how that kind of works with. I also want to show you the historical precedent for what's happened before and where I think we are heading eventually. Let's get into that article right now. So this was an article from SaturdayDownSouth.com. Fox Sports analyst Dave Wanstead says several Big 12 teams on the verge of finding new conferences. Now remember here, this is 11 months ago, so this was back when the Big 12 was at 10, losing Texas and Oklahoma, and they are going back down to the irate 8. We all remember them. His report says he was at the Fox meetings and was told Kansas to the Big 10 and Kansas State to the Pac-12. He also mentions here that Oklahoma State and Kansas State to the Pac-12. West Virginia will join the ACC, and Kansas and Iowa State to the Big 10. He didn't mention Texas Tech, and he didn't mention Baylor. That should have been a big sign right there. So as we all know, that is absolutely positively unbelievably hilarious right now, considering the fact that the Big 10, again, wanting to make sure they have AAU members and solid institutions and have good markets, they were just going to add Iowa State and Kansas to them because they were relatively close by. However, USC has broken all of the rules that what we thought was about, the conference realignment and what things actually matter. And they went all the way across the country and got the LA market, got USC and UCLA going over there. Now there's several reports out there. Gavin Newsom's going to try and block it, and this is going to happen. It's not going to matter. I actually spoke with my boy Coos over at Coos' Corner, and he had mentioned that Joe Manchin wanted to make a law that Marshall and West Virginia had to play each other. That eventually went away because West Virginia lost a ton of money in that situation. Ultimately, I don't think these governors are nearly as powerful as they think they are. California does have a lot of rules and a lot of power at the top, but we'll see what actually comes from that. But that's kind of the mindset, was the fact that UCLA and USC went all the way over across the country, and they're going to be doing that in 2024, is all the rules are off right now. So I actually want to go through an article about that to basically talk about where we're kind of headed, because right now the logical conclusion is the fact that, Miami and Florida State and Georgia Tech are going to join the SEC, and then, Pitt and West Virginia are going to join the Big 10, and this is going to happen there, and that's going to happen here. I think that we need to take a more broad focus, see what's happened before, and see where we are heading towards in order to get a more accurate picture of that. So here we are from OMNY.FM, your boys unrivaled with Alex Curie and Scott Mitchell from KSL Sports Zone 97.5 FM, talking about Oregon and Washington might want unequal revenue to share to remain in Pac-12. So they're basically talking to the Pac-12 like, here's the deal. We're the two most valuable brands. We want a bigger piece of the pie in order for us to stay. If not, we will go to the Big 12. We'll try and talk to the ACC. We don't care. We want out because we don't like our current deal right now. That's the report that's coming out right now. Now, I know that I said before that we shouldn't ignore Dave Wanstead's report, but then take this seriously. But I do think this is something that's happened before. Texas has, for the longest time, wanted an unequal revenue distribution from the Big 12, and that was ultimately what caused them to move, and everybody hated Texas, and basically Texas shot down every idea. Then they left, and now they were able to add 4 new members. I mean, they added BYU within weeks of Texas leaving because I think that they wanted things their way so badly. They wanted unequal revenue distribution. They wanted the ability to have the Longhorn Network, also to be able to have high school games broadcasted on the Longhorn Network, and they can be like, yeah, we're going to have unfettered access to all of these recruits. Yeah, no, it's totally going to be fine. It's totally fair. I think that the guys at the top are always going to do their best to kind of eliminate the competition through, subtraction, things like that. But this sentiment right here is not just held between Oregon and Washington. I want to make sure we can see something because I feel like we're headed for a certain situation coming in the future that is going to just blow up everything we know about college football even more than USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. This is an article a while back. This is from the 1996 NCAA Conference realignment fiasco because there was a ton of movement in this offseason. So we go in here and we says this all was initiated by the dissolution of the Southwest Conference and the formation of the Big 12 and the expansion of the Western Athletic Conference to 16 teams. We will get into that in a second here. Mark my words. I'm telling you, that is important for the future. The new WAC ultimately did not last long, as 8 of its 16 members left the conference in 1999 and founded the Mountain West Conference. We're going to get into that in a second here. Basically, what we're saying here is the fact the Southwest Conference was plagued by 2/3 of its membership being on probation, and at one time, for NCAA recruiting violations, only Arkansas, Baylor, and Rice avoided sanctions. And at this time, Baylor and Rice were not strong programs. Rice still isn't a strong program, but Baylor is. Arkansas was a decent program. SMU had the death penalty and things like that. Basically, Texas and Baylor and Texas Tech joined the Big 8 conference, and they formed the Big 12. SMU, TCU, and Rice accepted invitations to join the WAC. I mean, look at these old formation or former conferences we had here. This was just, things were all over the place. Look at the Big West here. Big West was Arkansas State. The Big West, what do we got here? We got the Big West was Louisiana Tech. Those are relatively close to each other. Okay, the Big West was Northern Illinois. The Big West was San Jose State. The Southwestern Louisiana, a.k.a. the UL Lafayette Raging Cajuns, now Louisiana. That makes a little bit of sense. And then UNLV. The Big West was all over the place. But what I want to talk about is all of this movement and what happened with the Mountain West Conference. So this is about the creation of the Mountain West Conference. The genesis happened here because the creation of the Mountain West Conference was a delayed after effect of the 1996 NCAA Conference realignment, which initially triggered 2 years earlier when the Big 8 Conference agreed to merge with 4 members of the Southwestern Conference to create the Big 12, which would be in competition for the 96-97 school year. So think about this here. The Western Athletic Conference, which had initially announced plans to expand beyond its then 10 members to 12, ended up with even more potential expansion prospects. Ultimately, the WAC took in 3 of the 4 Southwestern Conference schools, Rice, Southern Methodist, and TCU. 3 other schools were added to bring the total membership to 16, namely the Big West Conference members San Jose State and UNLV, plus the University of Tulsa, an NCAA football independent, and otherwise a member of the Missouri Valley Conference. The WAC's 16 teams were divided into 4-team quadrants, 2 of which rotated between the Mountain and Pacific divisions every 2 years. However, the newly expanded WAC soon racked by tension between the established and new members. So think about this. I want you to remember that because right now we're talking about the expansion of the SEC, the expansion of the Big Ten. But remember, that means that Michigan and Ohio State still have to get the same amount of money as Indiana and Purdue. I know that Rutgers is kind of on their own situation. They're kind of an entry-level member right now. They're not really on the same level as getting the same money as Michigan State. But think about that. Alabama and Vanderbilt get the same amount of money from the conference. Eventually, I think that's going to bring about a situation that we're going to read about right here. In the spring of 1998, BYU and Utah proposed a permanent split into 2 8-team divisions. The proposal would have forced some schools into an unnatural alignment because of geographic distribution of the conference. Air Force was the most strident opponent of this proposal, threatening to become an independent soon after this proposal by BYU and Utah. The presidents of Air Force, BYU, Colorado State, Utah, and Wyoming met at the Denver International Airport to discuss their future, and they agreed to break away from the WAC to form a new conference. They invited the WAC members from New Mexico, San Diego State, and UNLV to give them what would become the Mountain West Conference, and they eventually invited in TCU. So you can see this map right here. It was originally Air Force, Colorado State, Wyoming, Utah, and BYU. Right here, these teams, they added in New Mexico, they added in UNLV, and they added in San Diego State. This was the Mountain West Conference. They said, kind of screw you to the rest of these WAC members here. Boise State was the later addition. Same thing with Fresno State, San Jose State, and Nevada. And then over here in Texas, around the Dallas area, was where they added in TCU. So that was originally the Mountain West Conference. Remember, they had a giant 16-team conference, but there were certain things that the top bloods wanted to do that not everybody was with. So they said, screw it, let's just make our own conference. You would be absolutely positively sniffing paint if you don't think that Alabama, Georgia, and Florida aren't sitting back like, why are we paying South Carolina and Kentucky and Mississippi State? Why are we paying them the same amount of money as us? What if we were to just do our own thing? I want to get into a thing that I've created recently, an Excel spreadsheet based on a couple of different things here. I want to show you kind of what I'm talking about. So this was the college football team viewership and education breakdown for 2021, and this is based off that medium.com article. This is the average viewers per game in thousands. Obviously this is, 5,220, which is 5 million. But check this out. When we go to the SEC, I want to make sure we can see something here. Do you see a pattern? I certainly do myself. Do you see these numbers? And then do you see these numbers? Now, these numbers aren't bad. Mississippi State's pretty decent. 43 is pretty good. South Carolina's pretty good. Mizzou's pretty good. Vandy's not. But you see these numbers here. I am proposing. I'm not proposing, but I'm basically kind of hinting that what BYU and Utah did, where they eventually said, you know what, we're in a 16-team conference, but I don't like the fact that these guys are bringing as much money as we are. So if you check this out, these are the average number of viewers per game. This is about 2 million. This is double that. So right now, these people right here are getting, this is conference payout, conference payout, conference payout, conference payout, and then conference payout. Why don't they get double of that? And again, if you keep what you kill, that's kind of the situation here, that Alabama probably should get double what all of these schools are getting out there based on their viewership per game. I think that that is going to be a potential situation that we're going to have to address in the future. I want to make sure we can go through that because I think a lot of people right now are like, oh yeah, dude, they're going to add them. They're close by. They're going to add them. I really think that, I don't think that you understand how disloyal all of these teams are. Now, I do think that Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and Auburn would have to make sure they check with their TV market and their TV partners because they would ultimately want to, that's who kind of runs these situations. But I do not be surprised. And again, I wanted to show you a couple things here. Let's go Big Ten, let's go ACC, let's go Pac-12, and let's go the Big 12. So I would not be surprised. You see how this is, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is Notre Dame. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually in the future we see something like this. That's 15, no, one more, and that's 16. There's your conference. Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Penn State, Georgia, Oklahoma, Auburn, Michigan State, Oregon, Wisconsin, Nebraska. First of all, that's what the TV partners really want, okay? I don't give a dang what anybody says. They don't care about Ohio State versus Indiana. They don't care about this or that. They want that. That's the conference they want to have. That's what they're going to try to push for in the future. I don't know what's going to happen. I do know that AAU membership, like I said, to the Big Ten, that is very important. But you saw the fact, first of all, geography means nothing nowadays, especially at the top. What I think eventually is going to happen is I think that we're going to see something like this. This is going to be a conference right here. And then I think we'll probably see something like this is going to be a conference right here. Actually, probably like this or something like that. But I'm just guessing right now. But as we get farther and farther down, we're going to see more and more regional things. So these ACC schools are probably going to stick together. We're going to see maybe Rutgers kind of join these different schools here. I think that's eventually going to be the situation. Right now, there are certain things that complicate it in terms of, we're talking about, TV markets, because that one kind of throws things off. Rutgers right now is the greatest beneficiary of not only the AAU membership, but also the fact that they're in New York, because they don't really bring a lot to the conference. I mean, when we go back here and check out the Big Ten, it is very apparent that Rutgers is at the bottom here. So Rutgers gets 488,000 people watching per game. Michigan gets almost 10 times that amount. But I think that, and again, I know they're at a lower rate right now, but Michigan probably should get more money than that. Eventually, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see that. We hate to see it because it's so annoying, but I eventually think that, and again, this is probably a 2050, 2060 type situation, because first of all, because the ACC is just delaying the inevitable here because of their grant of rights. Good on them and bad on them at the same time. But that being said, I think that eventually we're going to see what the big teams want, which is basically just like an NFL light, where Oregon and Ohio State and Michigan and Florida and Georgia and USC and Miami, they're all going to play each other on a game-to-game, week-to-week basis and tell everybody else to kind of screw off. As you get smaller down in those conferences, I think they'll matter a little bit more. Oregon State and Washington State have to stick together with each other. I think that UCF is on the up and up, but USF is doing their best to get tethered to them as much as they can. I think that Georgia Tech is doing their best to try and tether themselves to somebody important. I think that Pittsburgh is doing that same thing too. You're going to see the fact that the teams outside of the ACC, outside the SEC and the Big Ten are going to try to tether themselves in ways that they can. But eventually what will happen is that the ACC is going to get pillaged. The remainder of the ACC is either going to go to the Big 12 or they're going to pull from the Big 12. The Big 12 is going to pull from Mount West. Mount West is going to pull from, and we're going to see this whole situation again. But like I said, the ultimate situation that's going on right now, I believe, is this. That right there is what the TVs actually want, what the networks actually want. They want that to be a conference right there. All right, guys, what's your opinion on my opinion on this situation? That's what I think is going to happen in the future. Like I said, USC and UCLA joining. I do think there's some educational things that could hinder that, but ultimately, we're just beating around the bush here, okay? No offense to Vanderbilt. No offense to South Carolina. No offense to Missouri. But I think that if the SEC's top had their choice, they would be associated with the tops of the Big 10, tops of the Pac-12, tops of the Big 12, tops of the ACC, and tell everybody else to screw off. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. That's it for me. I will see you guys on Monday. I am out.